Hello, everyone. My name's Jerry Clayman, and it's my pleasure to be introducing John Broons to you. I've known John for over 20 years in multiple countries and lots of cities here in Australia. I've seen him make a real difference to fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, cousins, aunts and uncles. Family business is at the core of John Broons. John's been a globally awarded family business expert, one of only three people in Australia to hold the coveted title of Fellow of the Family Firm Institute. Other recognition of his valuable work with family business include the International Robert Nourse Award, which I was lucky enough to witness John receive in 2013, the National FBA Advisor of the Year Award in 2020, and John was inducted into the International Family Business United Hall of Fame in 2023. John has dedicated his working career to answering the question, how do I guide and support families in business to a place where they're thriving? Not only has John spent the last 40 plus years answering this question, but he's also been there and done it. Early on in his career, John successfully bought and sold his very own family business while maintaining close and connected relationships with his own family. And that's really important to John to balance both the great business expertise, but bringing your family along. John immerses himself within the family businesses he works with to gain a detailed understanding of the unique issues and challenges the family and the business face. Then he works with each member of the family to connect with, engage, and inspire them, working alongside them to find solutions that work. Through his experience, John has developed proven methodology and a structured process to get results every time, no matter the complexity. Now, today's webinar is focused on Unite, which is the first phase in John's methodology. John will be answering your questions based on the most popular themes he received. If you do have questions during this session, please don't hesitate to email John at john@johnbrooms.com, and he'll respond as soon as possible. I'll hand it over now to John. I hope you all enjoy the session.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Appreciate those kind words very much. I will start sharing my slideshow at this point, and this then will be the introduction slide. And I want to talk a little bit about my own family that set me on this path of working with families in business. My grandparents came from overseas pre-Second World War, and my grandfather started a business that grew into a public company, a listed public company in Australia. And it was quite a large business. It had a number of entities. It was in many different industries, in construction, in vehicles, car sales, finance, timber, construction. And my grandfather grew this business into the 1960s, and he passed away in 1966. The family connection started there because my father and my uncle were both family members, and they were the general managers or directors of the business. And when my grandfather passed, they became joint managing directors. They kept the business going for a number of years. It was quite a big business, to say the least. And an offer came that was too good to refuse. So after a number of years of being brothers in arms and controlling and growing the business, they took an opportunity and they exited. What that did was my uncle and my father separated and went their different ways. My father took on some parts of the business that he did enjoy, and my uncle went off to do other things with his family. So I left school at 17 and went straight into the family business. I had brothers-in-law working in the business, and at one point in time, my oldest sister, 13 years my senior, came into the business. So I have three older sisters. Two weren't in the business, but there were brothers-in-law working in the business. Um, Bearing in mind, I saw this business when I was much younger through kids' eyes, how wonderful things are and how perfect life can be living and working in a family business. Um, but time changes things, and after my grandfather passed, and my dad was running things, and I was working in the business. My sister, when she joined the business, she came in and started doing computerizing the structures within the business, and eventually became Dad's right-hand person. And that was fine. The business kept going, and then in 1983, my father passed away quite suddenly, and there were no plans, but everything in my father's will, everything went to my mother. And my mother made my sister the managing director of the business. At that stage, I was 27 years old. And really, at 27 years old, the cultural background behind me is it should be me. I'm the prodigal son, three older sisters. So it didn't happen that way. Obviously, I was incredibly naive, and it certainly was not the right decision to put me in as managing director of the business. And my sister took control. We worked for a number of years, probably till the late 80s, together. I had an area of production and logistics and manufacturing, and my brother-in-law was looking after the sales, and my sister was leading administration. And it got to a point where there was a recession here in Australia in the late 80s, and five families living off one business. The times got tough, and we had negative cash flow. So it put us into a lot of pressure. And we were surviving through that. We weren't doing terribly, but it put a lot of pressure on the family, especially because we were a close family and we would meet together regularly. So the meals would be fine, but then the arguments would start. And really, we had no plan for working ahead. It was just anger and frustration. So at one point, I thought, I need to change this paradigm. I wasn't happy with it. So I went to my mother and asked if she would listen to a proposal that I would write. I didn't know what my proposal would be, but she said yes, she would listen to a proposal. So I put a proposal to her to buy the business out of the family wealth and start on my own. That she agreed to. We had a family meeting. It took 6 months to do all of the work. We had a family meeting, and after about 3 hours, I walked out of that family meeting, letting go of a number of opportunities that could have been mine, but I took the business and started creating my own life. So I took the entity. The entity stayed within the family, if you want to call it continuous family business. And I held the business, and it was quite a change of life. My memory tells me that there were no family business advisors in existence in Australia. There was no field of family business. There was no idea of advisors. How do you look after the family when you go through a transition of this nature? And that's the part that set me on my journey and also helped me work on the idea of family business and how we need to lead family businesses. So here we are. This is the three family business phases that I see all family business facing. The three parts are unite, build, and transition. At this point, I'll say thank you for sending your questions in, because really I'll be addressing most of those, and I'll put them into some categories and engineered this presentation around it. So thanks for your questions, and I hope I answer them today. So with these three phases, the family experience that I had taught me that you have to have a united family. and also working with families in other families, if they're not united together, if they're not thinking on the same page, if they're not interested to be together, if they're not united, um, the family doesn't work long term being in business together. So the unite part is really an important part. It's the ground, it's the foundation that we all will go forward with. The build part is more about building the governance around the family and the business that doesn't exist at this point in time, or probably doesn't exist. Some families in business may have a set of rules that they live by, they work by. There is one I can reference, the Moggy family that own Kikkoman soya sauce. Most people will have come across Kikkoman in their lifetime. If you like to Google the Moggy family creed, you will find that that family creed has been around for 400 years. And it is a way of the family rules, leading the family and helping them make business decisions. So in the build phase, there are parts that we will set family rules and build a governance structure of how we talk to each other, and how we talk about the business. The third part, the transition part, most people talk about, oh, well, we're going to do a succession. We want to put a succession plan in place. You can't really do a succession till you know enough about the rest of your family members and what they want and how they want to do things, and whether or not you've got a good enough structure to be able to handle this, and you've gone through the build phase so everybody knows what's going on. So the transition is the last phase that I see families go through, and sometimes the transition will be a partial pruning of the family tree, asking a member of the family to leave, or a family member asking to leave, and how that is handled. So there's a lot to do in the transition part. So to me, in the unite phase, there are three critical foundation pieces, and they are all family dynamics based. And to get consistent outcomes, what we're really looking to do is to have trust, and trust is something that is earned. We have to be able to communicate well. And when I talk about education as the third part, it's the knowledge of yourself, of your family, and of your business. And it's not easy to know these things. There are a number of things that I've learned over the years. There are simple tools that we can use as family advisors. There's something called a 3-circle model. There's something called a 4-room model. There's something called a genogram. And these things, when we work with families in business, these are tools that we will use to help you, the family member, work through and understand and learn what it is that you need to learn. So we need to understand who you will need to understand who you are. We need to understand what your life experiences are all about. And we need to understand the way you see the world, your perspectives, and what sort of prisms that you might be seeing, and having the light bend a little bit so you will see things a little bit differently to the person next to you in your family. There's a big question that I like to ask also here, and it comes into the trust phase. So, and the question is, what is your definition of family? These days, we can have blended families. We can have families positioned all over the globe. We can have aunts and uncles that are not connected to the family. So what is your definition of family is a critical question that the whole family needs to address and ask themselves, and come to an understanding. And we need to write that down somewhere so we can understand it, and this will help decision making going on into the future. Another thing that is underlying here is values. We don't talk about values very much in today's society. It's not something that's taught at school, but we all have values. We all make choices. And one of the things in this early phase is knowing what your own values are. Knowing what your family's values are is also critical. But first things first, you need to know what your own values are. Um, when I talk about values, in my case, one of my values was to be able to have a reasonable conversation with my family and not have arguments. Um, so there was a respect part of that. So respect to me is high on my list of values. Trust. I trust my siblings implicitly. They don't. They've never done anything to upset me, and I believe if I didn't trust them, it would be very difficult to work with them. I have worked with a family once where a family member had been found to be stealing from the family and the business, and that will shape the foundations of that family, and it has. Um, I can say that it's still working, and that family are still working together. However, trust is taking a very long time to rebuild. Other things you want to know, other than values, is what do mum and dad want from the next generation? So that begs the question of, do they want them to grow up and do they want them to run the business? Do they want to step into the role? Do they want them to go and live life outside of the business and not have any connection to the business? And the next generation then has that question asking, mum and dad, what do you want? Do you want us to come into the business? Do you want us to enjoy time with you, learning about what it is that you do, gain experience, learn about the industry, and grow with it and take the business on? Then the next question that would come out is, obviously, how do you step away and how do we take control? Which then comes into a transition question. So we step through lots and lots of questions in this unite phase that some will be put off to different phases, but we're all building on this trust and communication and learning more about each other. Um, some families have very different styles of communication. They will not communicate necessarily directly with each other, which can be problematic. They'll create triangles and they'll bring other family members into the conversation for security or because of their own insecurities. So we have to work out better ways of communicating with each other. Uh, and it's not an easy exercise when you're living and working, I know, living and working with family members. Um, Sometimes one of the biggest question is, do you have a choice in this? Um, can I stay in the business and still work and feel comfortable here? Or should I be going out and doing something else to make me feel happy if that's my choice? So, so there's a whole series of questions that we ask for each individual in each family about what it is, what are the choices that you have, and are you making the most of your choices? Um, and then once we have choices, then we need to communicate that. And sometimes we hold our truths so closely that we don't actually know what the other person is thinking. So we have a lack of transparency. We don't know what other family members are thinking. It makes it much harder on decision making. So what does transparency look like for you in your family business? Um, and again, your definition of family is who's in the family and then who's in the business. Um, how does that work and how do we differentiate? Because we have things called roles and labels. In a family, you can be the firstborn, the secondborn, the mum or the dad. And those labels are with you for life. You can be the funny one. You could be the smart one. You could be the one who's always out having a party. And that's in a family place, but and that will never change. So, as an example, my mother-in-law is 93 years old. She has three older sisters, and the oldest being 100, the next one 97, and the other one 95. But they all call my mother-in-law baby. Now, that label has never changed through their lifetime. However, if they would have been in business together, they would have had different roles. Now, for a role, for example, here, if there is a general of an army, he's fulfilling a role of leading that army. Um, he could retire out and they would replace him, and the person's responsibilities would be to run that army. But if he was shot or deceased, they would replace him, same as with a corporal or a sergeant. Those people would be replaced to fulfill those roles. And that happens in business. We don't necessarily shoot people in business, but if we lose a sales manager for whatever reason, we will replace that person to fulfill that role. And that role is separate from a family role, a family label, because in a family we are in a different place. We're not working to make a profit necessarily. Um, so we've got a lot of differences here, a lot of things to think about in the uniting part of what we do. Um, how do we know that we're on the right path? And we need lots of things to do to actually succeed in these three things of the unite, the build, and the transition. But from a unite point of view, we need to prioritize communication. We need to be open and honest, and we need to be able to respect each other. We we know we're on the path when our family members agree with our values and our vision for the future, where we're going. We need to respect each family member for who they are, and we need to understand our family and business boundaries. All family members need to trust each other sufficiently through good communication, and we need to build on our strong family relationships. I find that clients that I've worked with are always prioritizing communication and attempting to stay honest and open at all times between parents and next geners, the children. We have opportunities to talk and be open every minute of every day. And yes, the days are busy, but we're all trying very hard to communicate. Having shared values and understanding our purpose, the reason for our business and going forward, makes a huge difference in how we will work together and stay together as a family. The respect for each family member for who they are means very much to me that if somebody doesn't want to be in the business or chooses not to be in the business, then they are respected for the choices and the life choices they make, and we will still include them as parts of the family. Things that may happen in the future are still parts of things that will be discussed when we start talking about transitions. Understanding family business boundaries. These are things when we talk about those models, the tools that I spoke about, three-circle model. These are, and a four-room model, these are tools that we use to set up boundaries so that family members get to understand which hat they are wearing at any different time so that they can work together. And the trust is fostered through good communication. At this point, I think I've done the short webinar, and I think we're on the right path. I've got a webinar 2 and a webinar 3 coming up on a build phase on the 12th of June, and the transition phase is the 14th of August. And if you do have questions, please contact me through my website. And I want to thank you all for attending.